to the next process of scope management in predictive projects, validate scope. Before getting into validate scope, let me clear things up for you. Guys, those first four processes, plan scope management, collect requirements, define a scope, and create WBS, they were all done in planning phase, initiating and then planning phase, okay? They were all done in planning phase. Now, validate the scope happens in monitoring and controlling, okay? So what does this mean? When we're done with create WBS process, it means we're done with scope planning, okay? Now, in real projects, real life, okay, project manager and team focuses on the next knowledge area or part of the project and do planning for that part. For example, a schedule, okay? So in real projects, PM and team focus on planning processes of schedule. Then when schedule is done, cost. When cost is done, resources, quality, risk, procurement, communications, stakeholders, okay? So planning processes for all of those 9+1 pieces need to be done, then planning phase is done. But here, for educational purposes, since I wanted to put all of scope related processes in one section of tutorial, we both assume that planning for all those 9+1 pieces of projects, which we call them knowledge areas, are done. We just assume that, okay? When we go to the section of schedule, cost, quality, we'll get into planning phase and discover all processes that happens in planning. But here, for educational purposes, we just assume the planning for those 9+1 pieces are done. Now, what's executing phase, guys? Executing phase means team will do the job, will implement all of those planning, okay? And executing phase and monitoring and controlling phase happens at the same time, simultaneously, okay? It's not in a order, no. Initiating happens first, then planning happens, these two are done, then executing and monitoring and controlling happens at the same time, okay? So project team executes all those plans, do the job, and make our deliverables. You as a project manager, you manage different parts of the project. For example, you manage communications, you manage quality, manage risk. At the same time, okay, for example, project team delivers something. One deliverable is done. Now you go and monitor and control that deliverable. And project team continues to deliver more things, of course. But that deliverable is done, you go and monitor. Or no deliverable is done, you just want to see if project is on track, okay? So monitoring and controlling and executing phases happens at the same time. With this assumption in mind, with this intro in mind, let's start validate scope process, okay? So validate scope process is one of the processes of scope, okay, which happens in monitoring and controlling phase. And if you're confused, guys, don't worry. That's okay. Confusion is not always bad, okay? When we start other parts of projects, this confusion will go away. Now, let's get into mini terms of validate scope process. Let's learn some new terms that we need to know before getting into details of validate scope. Let's get it done. Before getting into details of validate the scope process, let's learn some terms that we will use during this tutorial of validate the scope, okay? First one, validation. The process's name is validate scope. What's that validation means? What's that validate mean? Validation means checking with the customer or sponsor to make sure the finished deliverable meets their needs and requirements. For example, after building a new hospital wing or hospital department, for example, the client walks through it and formally accepts the completed work, okay? So this is how it works, guys. Our team do the job, okay? Completes a deliverable. Then our quality team, for example, quality control team, okay, do some testing and verifies that this deliverable meets that acceptance criteria, first internally, before showing to our customer, okay? Our internal quality team verifies, assess, test, inspect that deliverable and says, okay, good to go. Go and show it to the customer. When internal quality has passed, then customer goes and does the final acceptance. So validations means checking and accepting deliverable. Okay. Now, quality report is another term that we're going to use in validated scope process descriptions. Quality report is, guys, a document that shows the result of quality control activities. What's quality control activities? Okay, what deliverable was tested? What passed? What failed? Any recommended fixes? These are all mentioned in a document called quality report. So we only show those deliverables that pass our quality expectations. Okay, that's why we need quality report in validated scope process. You'll see how it helps us in this process. What's work performance data, guys? Work performance data is raw facts, raw data, figures, numbers about what's happening during the project. Okay, or in other terms, it's measurements collecting when doing the work. For example, task A is 40% complete. This is raw data. Or activity B cost us 120K. We spent like 120K so far on that. Or deliverable X is completed. These are raw data. These are called work performance data. We keep them in a table, for example, in a document called work performance data. I think it's self-explanatory. It's a data you collect while performing the work performance data. Okay, we're going to use work performance data also in validated scope, and you'll see how it helps us. Just learn the concept first. Now, the next one is verified deliverables. Guys, verified deliverables means deliverables that have already been checked for quality and meet internal requirements, okay? Ready to be shown to the customer for approval. So once deliverable is ready, your internal team, your internal quality team checks if it meets the quality standards, okay? If it meets, if the test passes, this deliverable becomes verified deliverables. Then we show these verified deliverables to our client. So our client then validate these deliverables. You're going to learn, don't worry. I just want to build some foundation here for this process. And next one, monitoring and controlling phase. It's a phase or group of processes that help the PM, which is you, track progress, compare actual work to the plan, and take corrective action if needed. This is exactly what happens in monitoring and controlling. Okay, you track progress. Is our project on schedule? Are we spending more? How's our resources doing? What about quality? How many deliverables passed our quality expectations? How's risk doing? So you track progress of your project. You compare actual work to the plan work. In planning phase, guys, we plan for all those 9+1 pieces, but we know that there are surprises in projects, and projects do not move exactly as our plan. There will be some deviations. Okay, you as a PM, you compare actual data, actual work to the planned work. Where? In monitoring and controlling phase, not in planning phase. Okay, the team executes the job, and then you as a PM, you monitor and control and compare the actual work that is happening with the planned work in the planning phase, and see if we are on a schedule, on budget, have like every aspect of the project. Okay, and if things are going bad, you take corrective actions to correct the deviation, to put the project on track again. Great, these were mini terms and concepts that you need to know before getting into the validated scope process. Now let's have our mini goal. Look up there, guys, scope management in predictive projects. What phase? Monitoring and controlling, not planning anymore, monitoring and controlling. Our team is doing the job, and you as a PM, you monitor and control the job. And the process of validate scope, mini goal. Okay, what exactly happens in this process? What do you as a PM and your team PM, which is you, confirms with stakeholders that completed deliverables meet the agreed scope and ensures everyone agrees on what has been delivered before moving forward. In simple terms, you as a PM, you show verified deliverables to stakeholders, to your client or that sponsor, and the sponsor checks it to the reference point. What's reference point? The scope baseline, remember? You and the sponsor or your client agreed on set of things that you will deliver. And they were all stored in a scope baseline, documented in a scope baseline, okay? Sponsor checks the scope baseline, checks your deliverable and says, okay, good to go. I validate this deliverable. It means I accept this deliverable. I formally sign and say, good. Okay, this is exactly what happens in validate scope. But now let's zoom in to validate the scope. You and the team extract the necessary information from some of the relevant existing documents, artifacts, conditions, which we call them inputs. Like what? Like scope baseline, which were output of previous process. Create WBS, remember? Scope baseline here is input. You need that because you show the deliverable to the customer, and customer needs to compare the deliverable with the promise list. That promise list is a scope baseline. That's why scope baseline is input. I mean, we're going to dive into how inputs helps us. I don't want to ruin that right now, but scope baseline is input. Quality reports, that's why we covered it. Scope management plan, requirements management plan, verified deliverables. That's why we covered it. Work performance data, that's why we learned it in mini terms. And RTM, these are inputs or existing docs, artifacts, conditions that you have on hand, okay? It doesn't start from scratch. This process starts from somewhere, and that somewhere are these documents. And then, to analyze, interpret, and transform those info to insights, we apply the right tools, techniques, models, or methods. There are two tools and techniques that we use in this process: inspection and voting. Okay. And finally, ultimately, PM and the team create and or update artifacts, deliverables, and etc. So there are three outputs to this process: verified deliverables, work performance information or WPI, and change requests. These are outputs of this process. So as a result of validating scope or doing the process of validate scope, we're going to have these three outputs. Awesome. Now let's get into inputs and how they help us in validate scope process. Now let's get into inputs of validate scope process. The first one, scope documents. There are two scope documents that we use as an input to validate the scope: scope management plan and scope baseline. Okay, what's a scope management plan, guys? How-to guide to deal with scope. Okay, how it helps us: you open up scope management plan, you go to a section called how to validate scope. Okay, because let's say your deliverable is ready, your internal quality team verified that deliverable. Now it's time to show it to your customer. But how? Like, what steps you need to take? These are all mentioned in a scope management plan. That's why scope management plan is an input here. You go to that section, how to validate the scope, and you follow that instruction. Okay, it may say, let's read an example. Scope management plan may say deliverables will be formally accepted by the Ministry of Health upon inspection. Okay, so this is hint, this is instruction that you got from scope management plan. You extract that acceptance will be done through an inspection process. Okay, so there is a formal inspection process, not just by phone. Okay, so the PM prepares for a formal walkthrough before sign off. And how scope baseline helps us? Scope baseline actually includes the promised list. Okay, that frozen list, that locked document, all of deliverables our client wanted is listed in that scope baseline. We need to review it and double check with a delivered deliverable. For example, in a scope baseline of our hospital project, it may say ICU department with 50 beds and negative pressure rooms. Okay, so we extract these are the expected deliverable. And during validation, we go and inspect if really like 50 beds and all negative pressure rooms are delivered or not. Maybe they delivered only 40, but in a scope baseline, it is mentioned 50. So these two don't meet. So we reject that deliverable. By we, I mean the sponsor or client reject that deliverable. This is how scope management plan and scope baseline helps us as an input in validated scope process. The next one, guys, project docs. Project docs are all of those project documents that are not part of project management plans. Okay, project management plans included all of those how-to guide for each piece of project, plus 3 baselines, plus development approach. Lessons learned register, risk register, stakeholder register, issue log, all other documents like RTM, requirement list, all other documents are considered as project docs. For example, RTM is a project doc. Okay, let's see how it helps us. Let's clarify with an example. RTM, in the RTM, there is a row saying requirement, let's say R12. Okay, you remember RTM was a table. Requirement traceability matrix. Matrix is a table. So requirement R12 is connected to deliverable D4. For example, deliverable D4 is emergency department, for example. Okay, so in RTM, in front of each requirement, the validation method is also included. We extract this information. Okay, we know that we must validate, for example, that deliverable through inspection, not just a report. So we extract validation methods of different deliverables from RTM. This is how RTM helps us as an input. Next input is verified deliverables. What did we say about verified deliverables? Those deliverables that passed internal quality checks. I think it's obvious how verified deliverables helps us in this project, because we only show verified deliverables to our customers in validated scope, not failed deliverables. For example, quality team verifies that deliverable 1.4 in patient care facility meets all technical specification. We extract this deliverable as a verified deliverables, and it's ready to present to a sponsor for sign-offs during the validated scope. Okay, this is how verified deliverables helps us. The next input is work performance data, or WPD. We defined it before. What's it? It's raw, factual data collected from the field. Let's say today is July 25th. You as a PM or your project coordinator goes to the field, goes to the job site and collect these data, write down these data, the status of each project piece, 9+1 pieces. Okay, this task, what's the schedule? How's the cost doing for this task or this deliverable? What about quality? All of those data, these collected raw data is called work performance data. Okay, so it's raw factual data collected from the field, such as completion percentages, inspection results, test outcomes, and actual progress versus planned. Okay, and remember, guys, this is work performance data. It's raw. It is not analyzed. Okay, we have output in this process, work performance information. Those are analyzed form of these data. Okay, we're going to get to that WPI, but this is the difference. WPD is just raw data. This is a typical WPD. It's just shortlisted for the purpose of validated scope. Okay, this WPD could have, I don't know, tens of columns. We just mentioned couples here. Okay, for example, first column is deliverable. For example, deliverable 1.1 is pharmacy and imaging labs. And now, by today, July 25th, why July 25th? Because it's my birthday. My birthday is on July 25th of 1991. But this is just an example. By today, this deliverable should have been completed. By today, we planned to complete this deliverable. Planned percentage is 100%. What's actual percentage? It's 100%. Our team actually completed it exactly like our plan. But look at the next deliverable. 1.4 inpatient care facility, for example, the plan was 100%. I mean, this deliverable should have also finished by today, but the actual results show that only 85% of this deliverable is completed. So we are behind our schedule. Our team haven't completed, although the plan says it should have been completed by now, but it hasn't. Okay. So how these details and data helps us as input in validated scope? You use WPD to identify which deliverables are finished and verified so they can be presented for formal stakeholder acceptance, just like verified deliverables. Actually, where did you get your verified deliverables? From WPD. Okay. For example, deliverable 1.1 based on this table is past quality, so it is ready to present to our customer. The second one, it failed the quality, internal quality standards. So we don't show deliverable 1.4, which is inpatient care facility, to our customer because it didn't meet our internal quality standards and expectations yet. How do we know that? With WPD. This is how WPD helps us as an input. Awesome. Now let's get into tools and techniques of validated scope. Guys, look up there, scope management in predictive projects. What phase? Monitoring and controlling phase. What process? Validated scope process. And we are in tools and techniques. The first one is inspection. I think it's self-explanatory, okay? Inspection means checking, measuring, or reviewing deliverables to confirm they meet our initial expectations, okay? It happens in 4 steps, guys. Step number 1, you as a PM, you organize a formal meeting, okay? A formal meeting with whom? With key decision makers, like your client, like sponsors or other key stakeholders, the people who pay you, okay? So you through a formal review of completed deliverables. Now, what are those completed deliverables? Those are verified deliverables, okay? We have this list. Verified deliverables are those deliverables which passed our internal quality expectations. Now, these are ready to present to customers, okay? So you throw a meeting and you have verified deliverables in your hand, okay? And the stakeholders are sitting there. This is the first step. Next step of inspection is each deliverable, each of these verified deliverable is physically examined or demonstrated. For example, walkthroughs, testing, okay? Sponsor or client goes and physically see the, for example, one department of hospital project. They go to different rooms, different labs, and actually see that deliverable, touch that deliverable, test that deliverable. If it was a mobile app project, customer or client, log in, create an account, do a transaction, okay? Physically test. This is a step 2 of inspection. Inspection means testing, checking if it works or not, if it meets our expectations or not. Step 3 of inspection is stakeholders compare actual results with acceptance criteria mentioned in a scope baseline. Guys, in planning phase, remember? We developed a document called Scope Statement, WBS, and WBS Dictionary, which we combined and Scope Baseline is created, okay? Now, Scope Baseline or Scope Statement has a section called Acceptance Criteria. We know that. I think you remember that. Each deliverable has acceptance criteria. What's acceptance criteria? It's the condition that our verified deliverable should meet. So we consider this deliverable as done. Who wrote down that acceptance criteria? Our client said to us, okay? These acceptance criteria are criteria of our client, their expectations, because at the end of the day, the project is for them. So the clients mentioned that deliverable X should meet these criteria. So I consider this done. And I sign and say, okay, this is accepted. Okay. In a step 3 of inspection, clients actually do go and review scope baseline and then compare the verified deliverable that you show to client with the acceptance criteria mentioned in a scope baseline and see if these two match or not. If they match, This deliverable is considered accepted. Then we go to step 4 of inspection, which it's a time to PM to write down if deliverables are accepted or conditionally accepted or rejected. Why deliverables become rejected? When deliverable does not meet our acceptance criteria. Client rejects it, and you need to rework, replan that deliverable. Why conditionally accepted? There are minor issues with the deliverable. With minor fixes, that deliverable will become accepted. That's why it is conditionally accepted right now. Okay, so this is exactly how inspection works. Feel free to read that example. Now, voting, guys. Remember those unanimity and then majority, plurality, dictatorship. These were different types of decision makings. Guys, in this meeting that stakeholders, key stakeholders, decide if the deliverable is accepted or rejected or conditionally accepted, there are different stakeholders. Okay. Now, what if stakeholders has different ideas about this deliverable? Okay. One group says, this deliverable looks good, nice, let's accept it. The other group says, no, it doesn't meet our expectation. It doesn't meet acceptance criteria. Let's reject it. Okay, conflicting ideas. In these situations, you need to use the tool called voting. Okay, you go and check a scope management plan, the section of how to validate a scope. In that section, it may say that, for example, when these conflicting ideas and opinions about verified deliverables happen, use, let's say, majority decision-making analysis. By majority, I mean 50% or more of stakeholders need to consider one deliverable as accepted, okay? So if 49% of stakeholders say, no, let's reject this deliverable, but 51% says, no, let's accept it, this deliverable is considered as accepted. Why? Because it is mentioned in a scope management plan that majority is enough. We don't need unanimity, for example. This is how voting helps us as tool and technique in validate a scope process. Now, let's have a question to clear things up and see what type of question you may get on your final test from these inputs and tools and techniques that we have learned about validated scope so far. Let's get it done. Let's get into mini question. You're a PM in the final stages of a predictive project. The team has completed all deliverables and confirmed they meet internal standards. However, during the handover meeting, the client expresses uncertainty about whether the product meets the agreed acceptance criteria. Before obtaining formal sign-off, you decide to conduct a formal review session with the client to verify deliverables against documented requirements and acceptance standards. What process or technique are you performing? A. Control quality. B. Inspection. C. Audit. And D. Expert judgment. What a great question. And please think for couple seconds. Answer it yourself first. If you didn't, no worries. Let's get it done together. So guys, let's go line by line. You are a PM in the final stages. So you've done planning, you've done executing. I think it's monitoring and controlling, okay? Because in the final stages, it's either monitoring or controlling or closing stage or phase. The team has completed all deliverables. So the team completed execution phase. All deliverables are ready and confirmed they meet internal standards. Okay, so when a deliverable meets internal standards or internal quality standards, what's the name of that deliverable? Verified deliverable. Okay, so we have a couple of verified deliverables on hand. Now, however, during the handover meeting, this is a new term for us, guys. Let's learn right now. Handover meeting means a meeting, just the name explains handover, a meeting that we as a project team show our verified deliverables to our customer, client, sponsor, those who pay us. Okay, this is called handover meeting. We're handing over our verified deliverables so they could check it. Okay, this is called handover meeting. You're going to hear and see this term a lot in like different questions or tutorials. So this is called handover meeting. So we have a couple of verified deliverables. Now it's handover meeting. We're going to show these verified deliverables to our client or sponsor. In that meeting, the client expresses concern. Client has some concerns, okay? And we as a project team, we need to address those concerns, okay? About whether the product meets the agreed acceptance criteria. Where are the acceptance criteria located, guys? Come on, faster. Scope statement or scope baseline, which includes a scope statement, okay? Scope statement was that frozen list that project team and the other side, client, agreed that, hey, project team will deliver these work and deliverables, and these deliverables will meet these acceptance criteria which are mentioned in that scope statement. So the client has a concern that these verified deliverables, some of them, does not meet acceptance criteria that we agreed upon. The question says, before obtaining formal sign-off. Formal sign-off is another term, another general term that we're going to use a lot. What's formal sign-off, guys? Now, when you show your verified deliverables in handover meeting to your client, okay, and the client like accept these verified deliverables, the client should sign it, sign a form, sign a certificate. It is different in every project, but they should sign a piece of paper saying, hey, we accepted deliverable X. This is called formal sign-off. It's not verbal thing, okay? We accepted and then they could change their mind. No, we get their signature. So it is stamped. It is just, formal, official. So this is called formal sign-off, okay? Now, before obtaining formal sign-off, you decide to do something. And the question is asking, what's that something called? Okay, you decide to conduct formal review session with the client to verify deliverables against documented, for example, acceptance criteria or requested requirements. This is the definition of option B, inspection. So inspection involves formal review or measurement or testing of deliverables against documented acceptance criteria. Okay. So we do it with stakeholder participation. Stakeholders and our client needs to see when we are inspecting that deliverable. So inspection's purpose is formal acceptance, not internal quality verification. We have done internal quality verification, okay? It happens earlier than inspection. This is important point, guys. Quality, internal quality activities, which we call them control quality. As an short overview or short description, control quality means those activities that our internal team, okay, do to verify that deliverables meet our internal standards and expectations. Customer is not involved in control quality activities. No, customer does not see these. Customer may see the results sometimes if they request, but at the rule of thumb, it's internal thing. We need to make sure that, okay, this deliverable meets the expectations, internal expectations, then this deliverable become verified deliverables, then we show it to the customer. Okay. In a predictive project, inspection ensures scope confirmation before closure. But why other options are incorrect? A, control quality. Control quality, as I told you, it checks if deliverables meet internal quality standards, not whether stakeholders formally accept them. So the question clearly states that we've done internal quality standards, okay? We've done control quality, so it is incorrect. C, audit. Audit evaluates process compliance, not deliverable acceptance or customer sign-off. So audit means, guys, a third party comes and check our project, okay? Audit means checking how our team performing those processes. Are they doing the work in a right way? Okay, so when we say audit evaluates process compliance, it means audit make sure that the team is doing the work in a right way. For example, performing processes in a right order, or doing the testing in a right way with right steps. This is called audit. We're going to see that in quality part of the project, but this is just general idea, okay? And expert judgment supports decision making but isn't a validation method for confirming acceptance. No, expert judgment is just subjective. We need more strong way of making sure if verified deliverables are accepted by our client or not. This is a very great question, guys. And remember, guys, before this mini question, we have covered inspection. That's why this question sounded easy to you, okay? But you may see this question in your final test among those 180 or 185 questions. So at that time, you should know what's control quality, what's inspection, what's audit and expert judgment, and then pick the right answer, okay? Awesome, you're doing wonderful. You know what? I am proud of you because you're dedicated. Come on, you're gonna get the job done. And remember, we will get it done together. So no worries at all. Just relax. And let's get to our outputs. We're gonna have 3 outputs, so let's see them. Look up there, guys. We are doing scope management in predictive projects. What phase? Monitoring and controlling. What process? Validates the scope. And now we are in mini lessons and covering outputs, those documents that we're going to create as a result of doing validate the scope. What did we say, guys? We said when stakeholders inspect deliverables, those verified deliverables, 3 scenarios might happen. Scenario number 1. Inspectors or stakeholders, our client, accept that verified deliverables, okay? This is cool. Everything is awesome when they accept. Scenario number 2, stakeholders or our client may reject that deliverable. Not cool, but this might happen. Scenario number 3, stakeholders conditionally accept it. Okay, it is almost good, but with minor changes, we're gonna accept it, okay? So stakeholder raise some change request to add something or to remove something, okay? These are called conditionally accepted. Now, with this in mind, let's get into outputs of validated scope. Number 1, accepted deliverables. This is the first output of validated scope, okay? It's a document, it's a list, table, whatever format, we don't care. In that document, we list those deliverables that our client or sponsor or key stakeholders accepted after inspection. Okay, so accepted deliverables are those deliverables that meet the agreed acceptance criteria mentioned in a scope statement or scope baseline and are officially signed by the stakeholders. This is very important. We get formal sign-off. I mentioned it in the mini question, okay? Formal sign-off, guys, important. When we say in here the term formal sign-off, it means stakeholders accepted our verified deliverables. And now this deliverables status changed to accepted deliverables. It's not verified deliverables anymore. The approval is usually documented through a signed form or certificate. For example, once the ICU unit passes the negative pressure airflow test, this is internal tests, and now ministry, which is our sponsor, and ministry inspection confirms it meets CSA standards, this is acceptance criteria, the officials sign the acceptance report. Okay, at this time we add that deliverable to accepted deliverables. Now, guys, the second output is change request. What do I mean by that? Now, if a deliverable does not fully meet expectations or stakeholders want something adjusted, okay, want to change something, minor things or maybe a big thing, okay, the outcome of validate a scope is a change request. Okay, by change request we mean it's a formal document submitted into integrated change control process. Guys, we said in adaptive projects, agile projects, changes are welcome. Okay, we hug changes, all good. But in predictive, It needs to go through formal change processes, and that process is called integrated change control process. We're going to cover it in integration part of our tutorial, okay? But here, have a short description. Change request is a formal document that our stakeholder or client submits to us, and then we evaluate that change and we hand it over to change control board so they could decide based on resources, money, time, and so this is change request. Now let's elaborate with an example. During the hospital project, stakeholders may review the ICU and accept it overall, but they may notice that patient rooms need more electrical outlets, for example. This is minor, okay? So instead of rejecting that deliverable, that ICU unit, they raise a change request, okay? They request an official change to add outlets to each ICU room, for example. This request is logged. We have a document called change log, okay? We log, we record, we store all those requests. This request is logged, reviewed by the change control board, and only implemented if approved. So change request is another output of validated scope. And the last one is WPI, work performance information. We had WPD as one of the inputs, okay? It was raw data we collect from the field, but WPI is output, work performance information. It's information about the work we performed, okay? It's not just raw data anymore, okay? All the results of the scope validation process. What was rejected, what was accepted, what was the requested changes, everything are documented in a form, in a table, in a document called work performance information. For example, the project manager records ICU accepted, then 2 rooms flagged for rework, 2 rooms are rejected, and then 1 change request submitted for additional outlets. So as a result of doing validated scope process, these information were documented in WPI, okay? So this information helps sponsors and those key stakeholders and management see exactly where the project stands in terms of the deliverables acceptance, because these information will change to reports, just summary reports, and we will send those reports to stakeholders and those sponsors and management so they could see, okay, what's going on with our project. And one important point, guys, validate a scope is done continuously, okay? We just don't do it one time. Whenever a deliverable is ready to show to our customer, we perform validate a scope. For example, we perform validate a scope for deliverable X, then deliverable Y will be ready in 2 weeks. Again, in 2 weeks, we perform validate a scope. So we perform validate a scope process whenever it's needed, not just one time. Okay, this is important point to consider. Awesome, this was a very important process. But let's see what type of question you may get from these 3 outputs. Now, mini question. You are a project manager in the closing stage of a predictive project. Your team has completed all deliverables and confirmed they meet internal quality standards. During the final review with the client, only some deliverables are approved, while others are returned for rework due to missing acceptance criteria. After addressing the feedback, you record which deliverables have been formally approved by the customer to use in the closing phase. What are these formally approved deliverables called? A. Verified deliverables. B. Approved scope statement. C. Approved change requests. And D. Accepted deliverables. Very good question. And I know you're gonna solve it yourself first. So pause the video and do it. Please, under 30 seconds. Now let's get it done together and go line by line and learn something from this question. You're a project manager in the final stage of a predictive project. Whenever you see that the question mentions it's a predictive project, it means you need to respect processes. You need to do the work in a right order, okay? Your team has completed all deliverables and confirmed they meet internal standards. What does this mean? It means we have a bunch of verified deliverables on hand, okay? Whenever deliverable pass our internal quality expectations, these deliverables are called verified deliverables, okay? So now the question continues and says, during the final review with the client, only some deliverables are approved while others are returned for rework due to missing acceptance criteria. Okay, guys, let's learn a term called rework. I think it is easy, but you're going to see rework a lot. Rework means, we've executed, the team executed the job and delivered something, but that something is not satisfactory. Okay, clients does not like that deliverable. Okay, your team needs to redo that deliverable and again present it to the customer. Okay, rework means doing again, redoing. So guys, the question, this is a critical part of the question. After addressing the feedback, you record which deliverables have been formally approved by the customer. Okay. When deliverable pass internal quality standards, the deliverable is called verified deliverables. When verified deliverables pass inspection and our client likes that deliverables, approves that deliverables, this verified deliverables become accepted deliverables. So option D is correct. Let's read the description. Accepted deliverables are the primary output of the validate scope process. They are formally approved by the customer or sponsor after verification against acceptance criteria, which are mentioned in the scope statement. They serve as input to close project or phase, confirming client acceptance. Okay, accepted deliverables are input to another process that you're going to see in future. So now, why other options are incorrect? Verified deliverables, we said that it comes from control quality process that you're going to see in quality part of the project. But verified deliverables are those deliverables that pass our internal quality expectations. So A is incorrect. B, approved scope statement. Guys, a scope statement defines what will be delivered, but it doesn't record those accepted deliverables. A scope statement is created in the early stages of the project, okay, that frozen promise document. So B is incorrect. And C, approved change requests these are updates to project documents or work scope, not completed deliverables. Completed deliverables that meet our client's expectations are called accepted deliverables. Now, let me read your mind. I can see that you still have some questions remaining in your mind. Let's resolve them by mini FAQs. Look up there, guys. We're doing scope management in predictive projects. What phase? Monitoring and controlling. What process? Validate scope. What section? Mini FAQs of validate scope. Let's get it done. Question number 1. Are all deliverables evaluated at the same time? Of course, no. Deliverables are validated whenever they are completed. Okay, validation can happen in phases or increments, not only at the end of the project. So whenever the deliverable is ready, you can start the process of validate scope. We don't do validate scope for all deliverables at the same time. We talked about it before. Question number 2. Where are the acceptance criteria recorded so stakeholders know what to check? And I think you know that acceptance criteria are usually documented in the scope statement and detailed further in the WBS dictionary. Stakeholders use these criteria to decide if a deliverable is accepted or rejected. So basically, stakeholders check scope baseline because scope baseline includes scope statement, WBS, and WBS dictionary. Okay? And remember, guys, very high level acceptance criteria for very high level deliverables, those initial things are mentioned in project charter. So if in a question you don't see a scope baseline as an option, okay, choose project charter because it involves high level acceptance criteria and deliverables. Next question, who is responsible for signing off deliverables in validated scope? Stakeholders, sponsors, or customers, okay? The people who requested the work, the people who pays us are the ones who need to sign, okay? not the project team, for example. Question number 4. What happens if a deliverable is rejected? This happens, okay? Our verified deliverable does not meet acceptance criteria, so stakeholders will reject that deliverable. What happens to that deliverable? It is either reworked and resubmitted, okay, or it generates a change request if the requirement itself needs adjustment, okay? So stakeholder completely rejects that deliverable, so the team needs to rework entirely, or there are some just minor things. So stakeholders accept it conditionally. If the project team makes some adjustments, okay, stakeholders request some changes to that deliverables, and then our team works on that request, okay, and make some adjustments and then resubmit it to the stakeholders. Question number 5. Does every deliverable need formal acceptance in predictive projects? Yes. Every deliverable listed in a scope baseline must go through validated scope for stakeholder acceptance. This is very important, guys. Question number 6. What should a PM do if a customer complains that product functionality requirements were not met? The project manager should review the scope validation process to identify gaps in acceptance criteria, validation steps, or stakeholder involvement and address the root cause of discrepancy. Okay, guys, whenever there is a concern in the project, okay, you meet for the person who raises the concern. You understand and identify the problem, okay? How do you understand and identify the problem for this case? Here, the question says, the client complains that the verified deliverables does not meet the acceptance criteria, okay? So you check scope baseline and see, okay, what are the acceptance criteria and what are the specifications of this verified deliverables? Do they meet? You do it personally first, okay? So you check the scope baseline first. You check validation steps. Did we do the inspection right? You check stakeholder involvement, because stakeholders, especially those who have high influence, high impact to our project, needs to be engaged as early as possible. They need to be involved, okay? We need their feedback. They need to be involved all the time throughout the project. Whenever you want feedback about a deliverable from stakeholder, you engage with that stakeholder. When a stakeholder is engaged throughout the project constantly by you, they won't have a resistance, okay? They may say, okay, I was aware of whole process. I knew what was going on. So let's smooth things up. Don't resist on this deliverable, okay? It just needs, for example, minor adjustment. Don't just reject it entirely. So that's why stakeholder involvement is super important in project, guys. And in your PMP exam, and keep this in mind, that we as a project team, we need to engage stakeholders as early as possible and throughout the entire life cycle of the project. This is super important. Question number 7. What does sponsor's confidence mean, and how should a PM respond if it's at risk? Very important term, guys. Sponsor's confidence refers to the sponsor's trust in project's direction, in project's leadership, and in project's ability to deliver value within agreed constraints. Okay, when sponsor does not have confidence, or when this confidence is at risk, the project manager should communicate regularly, should provide transparent status updates, and address concerns early to prevent loss of support or funding. Guys, your key to success in every project is having sponsors' trust, is having those high-level key decision makers trust in you and your project and the way you are leading the project. If you lose that trust, you're done. You're fired. Trust me. Okay. So sponsors' confidence. This is a very important term. You're going to see it a lot throughout the tutorial and in questions, in PMP questions. Okay. So sponsors' confidence, we need to make sure that those confidence are always high. If it comes below a certain level, you are done. Your project is done, because they are paying us. They are paying you to lead the project, okay? So how do you keep that confidence high? By constantly engaging that sponsor and key decision makers, okay? By giving updates, being transparent. You shouldn't just say, okay, the project is on track, all good. No, they need to see it. Be transparent, be honest, be ethical, like act in a stewardship manner. So you, as a project manager, you need to make sure that you communicate regularly with the key decision makers. You provide transparent status updates and address concerns, okay? You sit down with sponsors and those key stakeholders and address their concerns. You listen to them carefully and, okay, identify the problem, go find the root cause of the problem, why this problem happened, and try to resolve it, okay? You need to make sure that your sponsor and those who pay you are always happy and satisfied. Awesome. We've learned lots of things, and I think you deserve a mini summary, so let's get it done. Look up there, guys, scope management in predictive projects. What phase? Monitoring and controlling. What process? Validate the scope. What section? Mini summary. So let's get it done under 4 or 5 minutes. So what did we do in this process, guys? PM and team brings the deliverable to the stakeholders and says, hey, here's what we built, okay? Does it meet what you asked for? Now, we started by extracting related information from our inputs, which were WPD, work performance data, verified deliverables, and then scope baseline, quality reports. These are our inputs. We need them, okay, for validation purposes. We used inspection as a tools and techniques and voting. Inspection was very, very important, guys. What's inspection? Inspection is checking deliverables through reviews, testings, or walkthrough, okay? You actually touch and see that deliverables to confirm if it meets your expectations or not. By you, I mean customer, okay? Inspection confirms completed work meets agreed requirements and acceptance criteria. As a result of doing validate scope, we had an important output called accepted deliverables. Those are deliverables formally approved by the customer or client or sponsor, okay? It shows project's work has met acceptance criteria and our client's expectation. Now, what happens if a deliverable does not fully meet the stakeholders' needs and expectations? They may reject that deliverable entirely, and our team needs to rework and redo that deliverable, or they may raise a change request needing some adjustments, some minor changes to the deliverables, and our team will start working on that changes after Change Control Board approves that. So the outputs of validated scope process are accepted deliverables, and then change requests and work performance information, which includes these information, what deliverables are accepted, what are rejected, what are needed minor like adjustments. These all recorded as work performance information. Awesome. And guys, during validate scope process, you applied some principles. Two important ones were engage stakeholders, okay? You actively involved customers, sponsors, and end user in reviewing and accepting the deliverables, because at the end of the day, your customer needs to satisfy. So you need to involve and engage with them. So engage stakeholders was one of the principles that you apply as a PM. And the next one is focus on value. You ensure that what's being accepted truly delivers the intended benefits and not just, looks finished. You need to act ethically here. If a deliverable is not fully completed, does not fully meet our client acceptance criteria, although the client accepted, you need to be honest. You need to say, hey, this, this does not meet your expectation. I know you approved it, I know you accepted it, but here's the thing. It lacks something. Okay, be honest. Focus on value. Make sure that every deliverable adds value to that final and initial goal of the project. Awesome. Now let's have some extra practice tests about validate scope process. Let's get it done together. You are managing a construction project for a high-rise commercial building nearing completion. During the walkthrough with the client, several floor tiles are identified as misaligned, though they technically meet the specification outlined in the project scope. The client expresses dissatisfaction and states that formal acceptance will be withheld unless the issue is addressed. The contractor argues that the deliverables were completed as specified and any additional work would require a change order. As project manager, you need to resolve this dispute and determine whether the project can move forward formal closure or if corrective action is needed. What should you do next to address this situation appropriately? A. Initiate the perform quality control process to re-inspect the tiles against specifications. B. Review the scope validation process to determine if deliverables meet acceptance criteria. C. Submit a change request to realign the tiles and document the client's concern. And D. Escalate the issue to the sponsor for resolution since it involves a dispute over acceptance. This is incredible question, and I want you to resolve it under 30 seconds. If you can't, no worries at all. You are with me, okay? We're gonna get it done together. Let's go line by line. Let's see what's the problem. You're managing a construction project, so it is probably a predictive project, okay? Commercial building necessary completion. Now, during a walkthrough with the client, what does this mean? During a walkthrough, when do we do walkthrough? When we're doing validate scope, when we're gonna show the client our deliverables. I think from this line, you understand that we are doing validate scope process. During a walkthrough with the client, several floor tiles are identified as misaligned, although they technically meet the specifications outlined in the project scope. So the concern is we have a contractor that says, hey, we did it right. Okay, we did it exactly as mentioned and specified in the acceptance criteria in the scope statement. The client says, no, I don't like it. Okay, it doesn't meet what I expected. Now, what this question wants from us, what should you do next to address this situation? This is a conflict. Now, my question to you, where do we keep our stakeholders' expectations and needs and acceptance criteria? Remember, guys, we said acceptance criteria are stakeholders, our clients' needs, okay? These are the conditions that our client wants from our deliverables. We keep them in the scope baseline and a scope statement, and then our team starts working on that list, on that scope statement, okay? So our team tries to make deliverables in a way that it meets the acceptance criteria mentioned in the scope statement. That's why, guys, there's no verbal thing in predictive projects. We store and record everything like formally in a document, so the client don't change their mind like mid-project or at the end of the project, or contractor don't change their mind and say, okay, I mean, based on our talk, we did it right. No, we record formally everything. You as a PM, when this dispute and issue happens, you need to go with option B, okay? You need to review the scope validation process to determine if deliverables meet acceptance criteria. One party says it doesn't meet acceptance criteria. The other party says it meets acceptance criteria. You should personally go and see if it meets the acceptance criteria or no. So what do you do in a scope validation process? You check, this is deliverable. These are acceptance criteria. Does this specifications meet this acceptance criteria? The first action you take is this, okay? So option B ensures that completed deliverables are formally reviewed and accepted based on defined acceptance criteria. Option B clarifies whether client concerns are valid within the agreed scope or are subjective preferences outside of the scope. Clients may have subjective and nonsense ideas, okay? That's why we record everything. Client needs to sign on a scope statement, okay? We review scope statement in planning phase, remember? We review scope statement with our client. They need to sign and say, okay, I accept this. These are fair, okay? If deliverables meet this acceptance criteria, I'm okay. Now, at the end of the project, if they have other preferences, it's their business, okay? I mean, in a respectful manner, I mean. Option B also helps the PM determines if the rejection is valid or if formal acceptance should proceed. Now, why other options are incorrect? Option A says initiate a quality control process. Guys, quality control processes happen before these things, before these validate scope process stuff, okay? Before inspection. These are quality control are internal things. This dispute and this concern is our client's concern, external thing. So option A does not make sense here. Quality control ensures conformance to specifications, but in this case, the tiles meet the specifications technically, okay? Question mentions that. This is a scope validation issue, not quality. Option C says submit a change request to realign the tiles. So if we go with option C, it means that we accept whatever client says. No, what if contractor is right? You need to personally see if it meets, if the deliverable meets the acceptance criteria, okay? It's premature. You need to verify if the change is needed by reviewing acceptance criteria first. And then if the client was right, you go and initiate a change request. But before that, no. You shouldn't take one side, just blindly. Option D says escalate the issue. Guys, remember this. We never escalate. Sponsor pays you to take care of the headaches and jobs, okay? We do not escalate. We only escalate concerns and issues that relate to like project's existence. If that concerns affects our schedule, affects our scope, affects our cost very highly, then okay, you escalate it to the sponsor and gets their input and idea about the problem and concern. So escalation is the last resort. The PM must first follow proper scope validation procedures. Awesome, you're doing wonderful.